Dia Guib Galera Cordia agus tá fáilte Road. Welcome to be my guest. Dia Guib Galera Cordia agus tá fáilte Road. Welcome to be my guest with me, Mary Honan, on Lear Media TV, supporting the Samaritans, Limerick and Tipperary, and also Clare's Wish Foundation. My special guest on today's programme will be Sr Helen Culhane, who is the director of the Children's Grief Centre here in Limerick. Helen has worked for over 13 years as a social worker with the HSE in the area of child protection and child psychology. And in 1991, she obtained an advanced diploma in child protection from Trinity College. And in 2001, she moved to a role as senior social worker to Milford Care Centre, where she set up and facilitated a group work support programme for bereaved children. Her work over the years has allowed Helen to build up a wealth of experience in working with children and adults, and she qualified as a counsellor and psychotherapist with the Dublin Counselling Centre in 2015. Since its foundation in 2009, the Children's Grief Centre has worked with over 1,500 children. It's my absolute pleasure to say that I'm going to be interviewing and chatting with Sr Helen. Welcome, sister.
Thank you very much, Mary. You have your homework well done.
Yeah, well, you know, it's just you're much more people tend to think of nuns, especially when they're not Catholic, and that they tend to think of nuns as being nuns and never having a life before or after, or everything is about the religious side of it. But you were very much into camogie.
Well, I was, yeah, and I suppose I was 24 when I joined the Mercies, and
were you?
So so it was a good age, Mary, because I had lived some, experience of life. Like, I loved camogie. I played with Bruff. I actually won 4 county medals, which I'm very proud of. And I was captain of the intermediate team when we won the county final. And I think of Helen Clifford and Mary. There was the 2 Cliffords and the 2 Noonans. Their father actually was a TD, not to find Gail Michael now, not to confuse him. He was the man in Bruff. And with Mary Hogan in goals. And I suppose I love the hurling. I love the camogie. I met great friends, but it was great training in life. My sister played at one corner. Kay was cornerback and I was the other cornerback. In those days, there was only 12 on the camogie team.
Yeah,
we had a wonderful priest, lots of people. He was our manager. He was an amazing man, Father John Ryan, God rest him. Yeah. Every place he went, he set up camogie and hurling. But what I found with the camogie, like, you make great friends, and you also learned, I suppose, sport was very good for one's mental health.
Yeah.
Number 2. And number 3, then there could be a night like, and you had a great match, and I played good at cornerback, but I could go the next night and someone marking me, scoring 5 or 6 goals off me. So you learn very much early in life that there's winning and losing. And I think I love seeing young people involved in sport, because it taught me being part of a group, being part of a community. But even to this day, there's a great bond. And I'm now I'll be 64 in April. And even when I meet any of the team that I played with, we can go back to those matches, especially the ones we won. We don't talk, like a hand beat us a few times. We were never too happy with that. And yeah, it's so funny. You don't even want to remember it. And even those who we played against, you just have lovely memories. I have lovely memories, Mary, and great friends. And that's why I followed the Limerick senior hurling team all my life. I've gone to all the matches.
Isn't it great? And we had to listen to a Corkman before we started, waffling on about how many times Cork won, and they're very jealous. They're very bitter when they don't win.
No, but it's great, and you can see there when Limerick won. We say the 2 All Irelands. What it means, I think, to young people and to all people as well. I was at the All Ireland, first of all Ireland. We went there 2 years ago. I was up in Croke Park. was very difficult to get a ticket, but the last minute I got one. And I was in the midst of a lot of Galway people, but when we won, like it was so funny. I nearly felt I was on the team. The Galway people alongside me were shaking hands with me. They were lovely. I just thought Galway were lovely. And I think they saw that Limerick had money for the 48 years.
Oh, but they played fabulously. They played out. I don't follow. I have to, make it clear from the beginning. I really don't follow GAA. I never played contact sports apart from basketball in St Mary's, and the only reason I was on the basketball team was I was last. When they were picking their teams, each captain picked their team. I was constantly last. Nobody wanted me because I was 4'10". I'm 4'10" now, so I probably was a lot smaller. And the only one who picked me was Clare Murphy, because she was on the Irish rowing team. So she could have played two people. And Clare was always kind. Clare was always kind, so she picked me. But I was very good at scoring. I was a dancer, so I was avoiding tackles like the plague. So I would never have played contact sports. Like, were you ever afraid that you were going to be seriously injured? Because hurling isn't
Mary, in those days it was yes, we used to we built each other, and I remember playing a match anyway, and I got a belt across the hand, and he started bleeding. And the umpire happened to be a nurse, and she kind of stopped the match and called me aside, and I had to get stitches. But when it's really, I suppose, I remember when I was playing, it was like a religion. You just get so, and I think there was something more. Initially, I played with Croom. I'm from Croom. We had a camogie team in Croom, and that team fell asunder. And Father Ryan co-opted us on to the Bruff team, and we had great success there. But
I taught dancing in Croom.
Yeah, oh God. But we'd say, but no, it just like the minute, I'm going to tell you a very funny story. So that was my camogie in hurling and football. And then in the 1980, I joined the convent, and I was based initially in My Ross.
Yeah.
And I loved living with the community in My Ross. I loved living there for the year. And then I moved on to the next phase of what they call formation, and what a novice back then. And I moved here to where I'm now working out of Westbourne, and with beautiful grounds. And so I was really active, have been active, and like a 24-year-old, and then coming into this kind of, praying and discerning my vocation. And one day I was downtown, and who did I bump into? Only Father John Ryan, and he was now the new administrator of St Joseph's Parish. And when he saw me, he went, "Oh, wonderful, wonderful." And he said, "Helen, I'm going to be setting up a camogie club in Ballycurran." And he said, "You'll have to join." So I kind of said to him, I said, "Look, Father John, now 2 years in noviceship, Sister Scholastica, God rest her, beautiful lady, has kind of said, it's 2 important years in that I have to make a big decision, and you're not involved, I won't be allowed to play." And he looked at me and he said, "Leave it with me, Helen, leave it with me." So roll on about a few weeks, and I was outside playing tennis on the tennis court, and who did I see walking in? Only Father John Ryan, and he kind of waving over at me. And I thought, oh my God, this one did very well. So if he came in fast, he went out faster. And then it was Sister Scholastica again called me in. And I think she thought, so he had come in and said, "Look, Sister Scholastica, I'm setting up a camogie team in Ballycurran, and Helen played before, and she's quite good. We'd like her to play." And she ran him and said, "These are 2 years." And she kind of, I won't say give out to me, but kind of said, "Helen, we're not punishing you. This is not a form of punishment. You can play after your first profession." So that happened anyway. And then something like maybe 6 months later, Noreen Long, who I had known Noreen and we were friends, and Noreen was from Drumcolliher, and she was discerning, and she worked with the late Sister Joan Bowles down in the Limerick Youth Service, and she was discerning her vocation, and she was also a camogie player. Noreen was in one evening to meet Sister Scholastica, and the next thing was I happened to walk by, and Noreen said, "Oh, I'm going down playing a match down in Somerville would you like to come down and watch it? And Sister Scholastica heard her, and I don't know whether she was feeling sorry for me or what. She said, oh, Helen, that'd be lovely. Now, I want you to picture, Mary, I was wearing a black pinafore, a veil, and we say, then jacket, and, you know, tights and black shoes. So get into the car and with Noreen and down to Somerville we went. And at this stage, I had put on a stone weight because I extra from the time I entered because I had no exercise. And Father John Ryan was getting out of his car and he saw me and he went, wonderful, great, come on, Helen, we're short. And so
you went around in the wimple and the.
No, I'll tell you, it gets better. Oh, I said, Father Ryan, I can't. I said, Father Ryan, I can't play. I told you. Oh, please, Helen. And it was amazing, Mary. When I saw the pitch and saw the girls running in. But I said, I have no gear. I'm here in my habit. Don't worry. So off he went anyway. Like I got a jersey for the team. He found a pair of shorts somewhere and a pair of boots. And I ran out anyway onto the pitch, and I could feel myself like.
Was Sister Scholastica watching?
No, you see, this was over in Somerville. So when the match was about to start, and next thing I looked up and I saw Somerville Convent, and Sister Hilary used to teach us music. Not that I can't even sing, but she's come every Friday, and I knew that their sitting room looked on to our pitch. Or looked onto the pitch. So I ran, now visualize this, I ran off the pitch over to Father Ryan. I said, Father Ryan, I can't play. Look, the sitting room is up there and they'll see me. And Father Ryan said, oh, yeah. And he said, leave it with me. And he ran out to his car and he got his peaked cap, your cap tweed cap that men used to wear. And he said,
was it Father, we had a Father Ryan who used to come to us in St. John's when we were in babies class. And I always remember how lovely he was. He had little glasses, and like De Valera type glasses. He was very gentle.
But anyway, what do you think? He gave me his tweed cap and he said, wear that. And Mary, I played the Camogie match in my Father Ryan's tweed cap. Now, can you imagine what I looked like? I played the match anyway, and I said, Noreen, you can't mention this, but that's a very funny memory I have of you kind of, playing a match when I shouldn't be playing a match and going around in a tweed cap.
But did you find that hard? You see, at one stage, I suppose we all think of what would it be like to be a nun and things like that. I'm sure we've all gone through that. Many probably haven't. They probably hated being in convent schools and that. But I loved it. And the two things were always stopping me. Fashion was one, and control. Feeling that I mean, it wasn't that I could be very stubborn, and I'm still my mother used to say, oh, you have the Honan streak. And of course there was no one more stubborn than her, but she'd always blame my father's side when I'd be stubborn. But how was it to abdicate so much of yourself to another, if you like, woman telling you you're moving away from the control, say, of your parents, and at 24 years of age, suddenly you're giving control over to a reverend mother or a mother superior who is more or less making and telling you can't play. And you can understand there are rules, but moving from one rule to another, did you find it difficult to abdicate, I suppose, a certain sense of individuality to the group?
Now, Mary, I think I was lucky when I entered in 1980. Like, it was very different, we'd say, and even formation was very different. And we'd say, and I was deep down, she was only saying this is for 2 years. Like, I continued to play camogie up to my mid-40s. So it wasn't, and I think what she was kind of saying, you've joined the congregation. It's a big decision to make in your life. So when I reflect back, it was a lovely 2 years of personal development. And I even often said to my friends at the time, especially friends who were getting married and making that big decision, I said, like, I had 2 years kind of, you could say it was nearly like a spiritual holiday. So like, it was like we were in college. I suppose naturally enough, he was very religiously focused in that, like, we would get input on prayer, input on scripture, input on the vows, input on community living. And like, Mary, it was a wonderful time, really. And I remember when I finished the 2 years, and then you went on to the next stage, kind of first profession, and I was moved to Down Convent, and I went working in the social services for 12 months because I was discerning then whether I'd go on to do social work. I was really undecided, because when I finished my leaving cert, I went working out in analog devices out in Raheen, and I loved analog devices. I was very happy there. And I'd also spent about a year out in Crome Hospital as a care assistant. I did that first. Then my aunt-in-law was a public health nurse, and she had 3 small children, and I went there for another. I was really undecided. Now, I had no intention when I did my leaving cert of joining a convent, far from it. But over the years anyway, and then when about 24, I remember thinking, this is something I need to try. And I prayed, Mary, that I'd leave. I thought, look, I'll go in here and I'll try this. And look, God, will you be happy then? And it was just, people talk about a calling. But
that's what I was going to say. Was it this constant nagging, or was it just intermittent, or was it something like, look, I'll just give it a try, and if it doesn't work, it doesn't work?
Like from about the age of 20, it was a constant nagging, especially when I'd be at Mass. And it wasn't, people have this image thinking you're a nun, that you're all Holy Mary. You're not, you're the very same as everyone else. But you just this strong call, like I could feel this. And I remember a friend saying to me, she said, she was asking me to explain this. And she said, I know what you're talking about. And I said, what do you mean? And she said, Helen, she said, I had numerous boyfriends in my life. And she said, and then she said, when it came to, I'll make up his name now for confidentiality. She said, then when he came to Pat, she said, I knew he was the one. Now, she said, trying to explain that, she said, and I think it's a bit the same. And like when you make that when I made that initial decision, for me, it was going to be short term, and I was going to be gone out, and I was going to be happy that I did that. But I could never find a reason enough to leave. And like everyone else in life, religious life, like all walks of life, is not perfect. You have your challenges, like every walk of life. But I never, like, the Lord has been very good to me. I suppose prayer, Mary, really is very important to me, not so much even what I do. Pray. I always felt this, and people pray, you don't have to be in a convent to pray, but I always felt this strong call to prayer. And I'm very committed to prayer. Now, when you say that to people, they think, oh God, she must be very holy. No, I see my prayer is my relationship with God. And even from, I remember we had a very wise Sister Angela. She was the novice formator, and she would say, you need to build your relationship with God, and that's through prayer. And she said, some people get all carried up in their works and carried away in what they're doing. But she said, you're first of all a woman of prayer. It's what you do then. That's next. That's not the most important as a religious. And I remember she saying to me one day, Helen, if you haven't got a foundation of prayer in your life and you don't build on that as you age, you arrive at 60, 70, you'll be a very frustrated woman, and everyone else will be wrong. And I think of her, she's living in Dublin, Beaumont, and she's so right. Like, prayer is very important to me. I pray to God always pray to God for guidance. That, again, people might hear that and say, oh, isn't that lovely, life must be easy. No, I, like everyone else, have had my struggles. In childhood, 3 of my brothers died before I was 8. Both my parents died from cancer. My father at 66, I was 32 when he died. Like, he was a young man, and he died, got a brain tumor, and was dead within 2 months at 66. And my mom then 16 years ago got cancer. She got, shortly after Dad dying, she got Parkinson's at age 60. And then 15 years later, she got cancer of the esophagus and died within.
That's what my mom died of, but they were both 59.
Yeah, very, very hard. So then I had a first cousin that died at 27. I had an uncle who died at 35 from a heart attack. So, you know, it's not that prayer makes it all lovely and dovey, but prayer is like, when I think of prayer, for me, it's like, it's my fuel. And even, you know, I'm now in the Children's Grief Centre, and we're looking at reconfiguring a building, and it's going to cost 3.5 million, and there's a huge amount of work like that. And I sometimes get so busy, I can put my prayer to the side. And then when I do, it's like something nags and says, Helen, you need fuel. So where I live, there's 2 of us in community. We have a beautiful prayer room. So I go in there, and it's like being at a petrol pump, and I get fueled up again. When I sit, reflect, and sometimes I'd sit in front of the tabernacle, and I say, look, God, we're doing this now. You have to help us out here. And I have to say, like, even when I look at the volunteers who have come to help on this journey, the personnel who's on our board of management, we've had the Helen and Fiona, who works as 2 part-time administrators, Teresa and Kira, who works with the children, Mary Brown, Mary Power, Beryl Carswell, Isa Hannon. They're 4 retired women. Mary, their commitment, the children love them, they do wonderful work, they're highly qualified, they're in retirement, and in their retirement, like Mary Brown is coming in here 8 years doing voluntary work. And it's people like them that, like, they inspire me, but they have been a wonderful support to me.
But sister, how do you want to be called sister or Helen?
Please call me Helen.
Helen. Because I've interviewed a few priests now, and they've each said to me, just call me anything you like, you know. And I always find it difficult to call priests and nuns anything other than father and sister. But I know nowadays people are much more cool. They want to be called by their first name. But
you know, it's not even that, Mary. But I believe, you see, I think prior to COVID, I used to give a lot of talks, and people would say, how will I introduce you? And I'd say, well, just introduce Sister Helen Culhane from the Children's Grief Centre. But then afterwards,
it's Helen. Yeah.
Because I think it can be a barrier. And I'll give you an example. When I walked over in Milford, I remember one day going in and to a 4-bedded, now they're all single rooms now, and this woman said, oh, I didn't realize you were a nun. I'm very disappointed you didn't tell me you were a nun. And so I remember I said to her, I didn't see any reason to tell you. I said, my colleague who works on the other side of the hospice is a married woman. I said, she doesn't go in and say, hello, make up a name now, I'm Kitty and I'm married. I said, it's not that I don't want to tell you.
It's just your title. It's not who you are. You are Helen. You just happen to be a sister. But Helen, I'd say now there's a rise in situations with children, especially in grieving with COVID in particular, because they can't be among their friends. They can't be out like they normally would be. They can't be involved in sports at the moment, because sport and dance and any activity is very good for children, because it gives them a focus, and it gives them this collegiality with other children, and it takes them out of themselves for a while. But with COVID, they're locked up in their own thoughts. And we were talking before we went on record about Anne Frank, and how children can see themselves through her experiences of being locked in an attic. They can understand it through the Holocaust through one child. But do you find that being locked up and being in a family, and in many cases with families where they're seeing abuse 24/7 now, that it's much more difficult? Are you seeing a rise in children with that need counselling, or
I suppose, Mary, we say in our service here, we never set it up as a counselling service. We set it up as a listening.
Yeah.
To support children between 4 and 18 where parents have separated, divorced. or a bereavement. That's I suppose, two main areas we work in. Yes, I agree fully. Like, I think we're going to see the impact of COVID in about 12 months because, like, my experience of working with bereaved children like we adults need to grieve. Now, they don't grieve like we adults, because we can verbalize what we're feeling. But for children, they act out. They don't know. They're wondering why I have a pain in the tummy, or they're wondering why I'm bedwetting. And it's a lot of time after a bereavement. And children, again, need to be able to say goodbye to their loved ones. And my heart goes out to so many children now where grandparents have died, because it's so important, that children get the opportunity to say goodbye. And we all know from listening, where families were not allowed in. And so all of this, then we say, then the small numbers at rituals, whether that's in a church or wherever, all of that is going to have untold damage.
Untold damage, because the amount of people for whom mass or going to their own religious service is everything to them, because it's a place they can pray, but it's also a place they can just get out of their own home and go for a walk, and walk down to, maybe in my case, St. John's Cathedral, and they're down there, they go to mass, particularly elderly people. They have a little chat maybe before mass, and they have a chat after mass, and then they go home, and it breaks the day, and that's gone from them. And the fact that they can't go to, not everybody can go to a funeral in a country that's been known. I mean, when my dad died, my dad was English, and I was just struck by the amount of people that actually turned up at my dad's funeral. I mean, it went from Cross's funeral home down the whole way to say Brown Thomas. And the Gardaí were out guiding people up, and we're a nation of people who go to funerals and like to sympathise on the death of somebody. You might even know them, but you might know a family member. That's all been taken from people.
Oh yeah, and Mary, and even like we say with the children, we'd say that sense of being able to look at, and you see, how are they to know that the person has died if they're not part of it? So you have all of that. It is, and even I found myself, my own sister-in-law, her mother died at a great age, but sometimes I nearly forget that this woman has died. And I remember they had asked me to come to the funeral parlour to say the rosary, and the thing that struck me when I went out, and I mean, I'm working with bereaved families for the last over 20 years. But when I walked into that funeral parlour, which I knew well in Croom, and we'd say my sister-in-law was there and her brother, and there was just the 15. But I went over to sympathise with her brother. And I so experienced. I remember thinking, what do I say? Whereas before you would give someone a hug or you put your hand in their shoulder. And I found I had my hands behind my back. And I can remember saying, oh, I'm so sorry. And I moved on, and it was most awkward. And this is supposed to be my area of so-called expertise. And I just thought I still remember it. I felt that I just didn't sympathize properly.
It's breeding a world of one germaphobes and people who are afraid to be anyway close with another human being. I mean, I was Dr. Niall Muldoon. He's the ombudsman for children.
Yes.
He was talking about I was trying to get him on the show, but he was talking about the rise in children going to psychiatrists and that for severe depression. And
Mary, what is very sad in Ireland, and I've been singing this for a long time, there are very few services for children. And people don't realise this until they have to look for it. Like our service here, we don't charge for the service. It's, because I purposely set it up that way, because where couples separate, they haven't got money, and then people can make a donation, and most do. But we'd say there is no, except for CAMS, and CAMS has the CAMS Child Adolescent Mental Health Service. They have a huge waiting list, and they now are directing children, and this was before COVID, even to our small service. And so I think another big problem for me is, you see, if really will be the disadvantaged and the poor that are suffering, I think, in this COVID. And
I mean, not everybody, they talk about, oh, isn't it great? And I mean, we're talking on Zoom right now. Isn't it marvelous that people at least we're able to Zoom each other, and we're having these Zoom parties, and we're having quizzes on Zoom, family quizzes. And what about the child who can't afford the computer? The children who haven't got electricity in their homes because the parents are trying to watch every penny. And we live in a world where it's almost like, can't they eat cake? Like a Marie Antoinette type world, where we think everyone's on the same wavelength, and that we're all computer literate, and that we all have the ability to just put our laptops on. Some children don't even have the means. And some children are in violent homes. I keep coming back to the violent homes, and they, you know, it wouldn't be safe for them to come on a Zoom call like this and talk to you while their parents are fighting, or they're being abused. It's not that easy for them to get access to another human being.
No, and Mary, I have a friend who is a teacher, and she told me she is thrilled to be back in school. And she said, Helen, and she was saying, she said, I'm a teacher. And so she said she was trying to do her teaching, and she has 4 children. And she was saying she found it very difficult. So she was saying, if she as a teacher found the homeschooling difficult, the Zooming difficult, she said, she was thinking of single parents, parents on the bereaved parents, couples separated, and it's like that. He was all lovely. We're all in this together. We're not. And I suppose Mary and I don't know.
We're not. We're absolutely not all in this together. Do you know? I mean, that's saying that along with the new normal really drives me mad, as well as stay home, stay safe. But what if home is the place that you're not safe, and that you're looking for somebody just to talk to tell them that my home is not where I'm safe?
Well, I'm hoping, Mary, we closed down last March until June of we say March 17th, whatever, April, May, and we went back in June, and we continued working face to face. But any of my volunteers over 70 couldn't come in. But we worked with a lot of children, and they were so happy to be back.
Yeah.
So the children haven't been back now since this December, but I'm getting phone calls from the parents asking, Helen, when are you back? They're looking to come. Even yesterday was heartbreaking. This child was due to come back for a review. So the children roughly come to us it's up to them, but when I look at my database, they come for between 6 and 10 sessions. And then we bring them back maybe a few months later for what we call a review. Now, in most cases, they love coming back and they want to tell you how they're being. But there was a phone call yesterday from a mum saying, and the mum told me, she said, Helen, I'm going to be honest with you, I forgot about the review. And the child's only about 11. And the child said to her mother, am I due back now to Helen? And the mother said, Helen, it was heartbreaking that she was looking forward to coming, because we just have a lovely place here. We have a lovely art room where they can do art and paint and play and read books and go to the sanctuary.
It is essential, because I mean my primary degree was art and design from the Limerick College of Art and Design, and you know, to get children involved in art and to get children involved in drama and creative things takes their mind away from even if they can't paint, the whole process of creating is so therapeutic. And they don't often get that in their homes, because the parents are struggling to actually struggling with life.
And even Mary, what we say, we children between 4 and 6, where when they come into us, they play, but through their play, they express their feelings. And then children between 6 and 12, we have a workbook around separation and a workbook around bereavement. And they're wonderful workbooks because it brings the children, they love them because they can talk about stuff that maybe is too difficult. And then for 13 to 18, in a lot of cases, they sit and talk, and they will talk away. They know it's confidential. They know we don't share reports with anyone. And then they can invite in their mum and dad at the end of the session if there's something they want to know or they're curious about or they're upset about. So it's as they tell me. And I suppose, Mary, the other thing I want to share this with you.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I'm just wondering beforehand, how, they're all under 18 years of age. They obviously have to have their parents' permission. And do you have to, are you obligated to tell the parents what you've been discussing?
No. And I think this is, except if there's a disclosure of abuse. But no, how we work is, and it works really well. So what happens, the first session, the parents come in. If they're separated, they either come in together or they come in separately if they're not able to come in together. So in the case of separation or divorce, we look to meet with both parents because life has taught us both parents are in this child's life.
Yeah.
So then if it's a bereavement, whoever comes in. And so we meet with the parent first and we explain how we work. That in the next session, then the parent sits in for 10 minutes at the beginning of the session.
Yeah.
And I do an example. I remember he was about 11 and his dad had died. And so I said to him, do you know why you're here? And his mum was sitting with him and he said, yes, my dad died and I'm very upset. And I said, I explained in how we work. Everything is confidential unless you tell me someone is harming you. Your mum will wait in the waiting room. If there's anything at the end of the session, you can invite her in. I won't be sharing anything with the school or with the doctor or with your mum. This is your space. And so now I just said to him, I said, just to make sure now, can you tell me what happened to your dad? And he got very uneasy and he started looking at his mother, and then his mother started winking at me. And I just thought, what's going on now? Mum had told me dad had died from a heart attack. So mum signed consent and went to the waiting room. Now, this was the first session with this 11-year-old. And when the mum had left the room, he said to me, Helen, was my mum winking at you? And I said to him, I'm all big to tell the truth. I said, she was. Why was she winking at you? I said, I haven't a clue. But I said, would you have any idea why mum is winking at me? And he said, yeah, I think so. Would you like to share it with me? You see, Helen, Mum told me dad died from a heart attack, but I know he didn't. I know he died from an overdose. So at the very beginning of this session, so then I said to him, and what would that be like for you to tell Mum? And he said, can I tell her at the end of the session? Yes, so then he goes do a bit of work on the workbook. He then invites his mum in, shows her what he was doing in the workbook. And then he said, Mum, the way you've told me that dad died from a heart attack? And the mother said, yeah. Mum, I know he didn't. And the mum said, what do you mean? And he said, well, Uncle Johnny told me he died from an overdose, but I didn't want to tell you because I might upset you. And this happens in bereavement. The child.
Yeah.
And that's what the parents would say to me. They'd say, Helen, it's lovely they can come in here. They don't have to protect you or Teresa or Kira or Mary or Isa or Beryl. They don't have to protect you. You're not a family member. And
but you become like a family member, Helen, because you become like a surrogate. It's sometimes easier to talk to a stranger than it is to talk to a family member, an actual family member, because he was probably trying to protect his mother. She was protecting him, and neither of the two of them were able to function properly because.
I want to read something that. So when the children finish up, we ask them to do. It's optional, an evaluation sheet. What was helpful, what was unhelpful. Did coming here make any difference? Because we want to continually improve our service.
Yeah.
But I'll back up this child now. I call him Tom. And Tom was finishing up and he was 10 and he had come because a sibling had died.
Yeah.
And when he was finishing up, I just said to him, I said, John, tell me, do you know, you've come here now for about 12 sessions. You know, I want to know what helped you and what was unhelpful. And this is what he said was helpful. Helen, it lifted my spirit coming to the Children's Grief Centre. There was no hustle or bustle. It took a lot of weight off my shoulders. Helen, it was like a pit stop on the road. It was a safe place. It was private and confidential. You know, Helen, it's a very open space. You can talk about whatever you want. And I didn't say to this child, I said, no, now we are going to be doing a new centre. Can you give me any advice? And he looked at me and I said, I'm looking for ideas. And he said, yeah, Helen, yeah. He said, I saw the plans up there. He said, have a quiet place with warm colours. And I said, what kind of colours would you be thinking of? Peach and blue with soft tones. So I very much.
Jesus, I think that guy is amazing.
Oh, yeah, but I suppose, Mary, as you know, I've no children, but they totally. I'm there at times, and people think I make this up. And last week I got an email. Now this was the first time.
I'm just shocked at the way he actually had actually intellectualized all of that and had actually thought it out, the peach and the blue, and he actually and the way he actually phrased it.
Well, and you see, our place here
really
is lovely, and a friend of mine's an art therapist, and when I moved over here to Westbourne to the wing of the convent, I brought in my friend, and she said, so you'd never think you were in a convent. It's a very warm, like not saying convents, that sounds awful now, not warm, but like very.
No, I love the brown wood. I love when you go into Mary Immaculate. It always reminds me of St. Mary's and St. John's School with the brown wood, and that's what I love. But not everyone would love that.
No, we have a red door, and children love the red door. But I got an email last week, and I was blown away. And this was the email: Dear Sister Helen, my name is, I'll make up her name, Mary, and I attended grief counselling sessions with you in 2010 when my lovely dad died, and my brothers also attended with you. I was just started a few months. I was 7 years old at the time, and I really benefited from seeing you. And then I won't go on to the rest. But her last line was, again, thank you so much for talking and listening to me when my world and all my family's world fell apart. And she's now 19. And I see our work here that I and my colleagues do, Mary, as early intervention.
Yeah.
So that children, like even with this, so I looked up, I was really curious after getting this email, and I looked up, we don't have any names, we just give him a number. And I looked up the number, and when he was in the very early stages in this, and I ran to the closed filing cabinet, because I thought, she must have come a long time if she has these very positive memories. And I opened out her file, and she'd come twice. And yet to think the memory, and she was 7.
It was so vivid.
So that's why I'm passionate about this. I'm passionate about.
I saw you on the Late Late Show with Olive Foley, and quite a remarkable woman who I'm hoping to try and get on the show, because her Anthony's father, his stepsisters live, they're neighbours of mine, and we've grown up together, and we were involved, actually one of them and we were involved in organising a Christmas CD in aid of the school for the deaf. And great neighbours, Cora and Eleanor Foley. But I was just struck by Olive Hurley's dignity and utter decency, and the compassion and the warmth in the woman. And I was, that's how I actually got to know you, or got to see you, or you came on my radar, and Olive. And I just thought, this is an amazing work that's being done, and very few people know about grief for children and counseling for children, because we tend to think, oh, children are like sponges, they soak up things, but they're very malleable and they get over things very easily. They don't. I mean, we all act the way we do based on things that happened in our past. And if you don't come to terms with them or accept them or find ways around them, you're going to drag them into your present and into your future.
And that's Mary, why I see the value of this work. And yeah, we are so fortunate with Olive, and that she has come on board as an ambassador. She's a huge support to us. And even when I see, we'd say, in a way, like her grief, she has turned her grief into helping us here in the centre to raise funds for our new centre and to promote the work of that children do grieve. And like I know that, and like I said to you earlier, I was 5 when my brother died. He died in a cot death. He was 3 months old. But I remember clearly to this day, and in those days there was no mass, no ritual, but I can remember all the neighbours coming in, and I can still see the white coffin being placed. We didn't have a car, but my neighbour had a car, and I can see the white coffin being placed in that car.
Yeah.
And we weren't taken, we say, but I can still, and I often reflect and think, you know, here I am now working with bereaved children. And then 2 years after that, sadly, my mother was expecting twins and they died at birth.
Oh, God.
So I know from my psychotherapy training, like we might say, oh, well, the children never saw the twins. But I know now from my psychotherapy training that, like, so in the air, in the environment, in the family, like my mum would have known she was expecting twins, and so all of that would have been going on around us. And then what it must have been like for my mother, for the twins to die, and for my father. And so the impact of that on them, which in turn would have impacted on us.
Absolutely.
And, yeah.
Absolutely, because I've interviewed, I mean, you know, my research area is childhood under Nazism. And, you know, you interview people who've survived, and you tend to think of them as being the survivors of genocide and things like that. But their children are also survivors. And I interviewed recently an Auschwitz survivor who found it very difficult to talk about his experiences. But he didn't have difficulty listening to his daughter talking about it. And the grief on her face was palpable. I mean, it really was. I actually cried in the middle of the interview, and she was crying, and her father was he kept saying, I don't really want to think about that. But she was trying to drag it out of him. It was like she was trying to find his life and trying to understand his life more than he was trying to remember it. And it makes generations of survivors and people who grieve because it's never been sorted at it's never been sorted at the root, the grief.
And on that, like I had a card there about a year ago from this woman, and she had brought her niece to the sessions, and her niece, the mum had died, this girl's mum had died, and so her aunt was bringing her in. And a year later, I got a card from this woman thanking me for working with her niece. But and I have it with us, you know. It struck me forcefully what she said. And I'll change names and everything for confidentiality. She said, I only wish that there was someone like you and your colleagues around 37 years ago, when as a 10-year-old, I lost my dad. And she goes on, you brought to light for me that well-meaning adults close to us thought it was the right thing to do to not speak about him, which in turn led me, this is the person writing it, to believe I should be embarrassed about the fact he had passed away. I still recall the tightness in my chest. So this woman is now 47. I still recall the tightness in my chest. If I thought I would have to explain he was dead. The phrase force shebus for Irish class especially. But thank God you and your colleagues are around these days to help so many children. Keep up the good work. And that's why we do our work. Like, and as she said, you know, I remember I phoned her afterwards and she said, I could see how my niece was able to talk about her mother, and we encouraged the memory box and all of that this girl would have when she was older. And that's why I value what we do here. I think that's why it's important. Whereas, as that woman said, she carried that, being tense in school, that there was something wrong, that my dad, and I know many an adult, and even though I have a very small private practice, one evening a week I work with adults, and maybe because people know what I do, I've had numerous adults who had been bereaved in childhood coming to me, and they all the same story, even as in adulthood, then being depressed, not knowing why they were depressed, and then discovering in a lot of cases, not all cases, the depression was due to this unresolved grief in their childhood that was not discussed, that either they weren't taken to the funeral, the mother was never talked about again, and then it's like a volcano. So that's why I think early intervention, we don't need to be psychologists, psychiatrists to know that. You get there in the early stages, then it's not as traumatic for the child as they go through their life's journey.
Well, sister, it's been absolutely extraordinary talking to you. As I said to you, I just have a special soft spot, I suppose, for the Sisters of Mercy. Why? I'll have friends now. I know I have friends who say remember back certain teachers, certain nuns that were cross to them and things like that, who for some reason or other I always thought were lovely. I won't mention the names of some of them, because they were in primary in St. John's, who I thought were lovely, and others, when I mentioned their names, they said the hairs just rise on their skin because they were cross to them. They were lovely to me. I don't know, and I loved them. Maybe it was because I was the only child who loved going to school and seeing my other people my own age, and I associated the nuns as being there when I was meeting people who I loved being around. So it was all school was a very positive experience for me for the most part, because it got me out of the house where I was on my own with my mother, because dad lived in England until he could get a job here. But it's been absolutely fabulous talking to you, sister, and what you're doing is absolutely so vital, especially now. And if anyone wants to contact you, what do they do?
What to do is we have a website. So we have an email, info@childrensgriefcentre.ie, or if they want to look up more in relation to our new building, www.childrensgriefcentre.ie.
info@childrensgriefcentre.ie.
That's if they wanted to email me, and if they wanted to look up our website.
It's www.childrensgriefcentre.ie.
Yeah.
Well, it was just absolutely fabulous, sister, and
Thank you.
We'll have to talk again.
We will indeed. We'll have to go for a coffee.
I'm absolutely for that, sister. You don't wear your little the Sisters of Mercy badge. You're not wearing the little crucifix.
I normally, if I was coming into work, I don't. No. But if I was out at an occasion, like church, or I would. I
remember being in where was it? I think it was in the UK once, and I said hello, sister, to somebody, and she said, "Excuse me, how did you know I was sister?" And I said, "You're wearing the Sisters of Mercy badge." I said, "I went to them myself." She said, "Oh my God!" She said, "Oh, I forgot about that." But anyway, thank you, sister.
Not at all. You're welcome.
God
Take
bless.
Care.
Bye bye.
God bless you.
Bye bye.
Myself.
You too.